I'd like to start off with you just telling us about your career and how you became a bankruptcy trustee.
Okay. I used to be a lifelong career public servant for the government of Canada. I used to be an EI expert. And in those days, I would fly throughout Canada training new recruits. Eventually, I became a national trainer with EI and then started teaching supervisors what to look for. Of course, EI was a very strong backbone of the Canadian economy. When people lose their jobs, they need to get their claims processed, and I would give them tips on how to get those done. Anyway, I worked myself up to be a manager within the federal government and EI. And then with one swoop of the pen, Prime Minister Mulroney decided to do some government restructuring, and they had a program where you could leave the public service and be paid out 6 months pay, or if you wanted to stay, you could trade with somebody who did want to leave. And that's exactly what I did. I traded with somebody that wanted to leave the government, and they happened to work for the office of the superintendent of bankruptcy. So they interviewed me, and I said, I know absolutely nothing about bankruptcy. And they said, that's okay, we'll train you. So they sent me on training. And as they say, the rest is history. I fell in love with bankruptcy, took all the courses, went through two 3-day-hour exams. I went through a 2-hour firing squad where they ask you questions, and I became a licensed insolvency trustee.
Wow, what a story. That's amazing. And what is it about helping people? Is that the basis of it?
I love helping people. And for me, a reward is when somebody says, thank you, you've taken the piano off my back. That just makes me feel very wanted. And I'm very appreciative of when people say, thank you. It really made a difference in my life.
So, working for the government and working for the superintendent of bankruptcy, how did that shape how you do things now?
I have a very great luxury. When I worked for the office of the superintendent of bankruptcy, when I first started, I was a senior bankruptcy officer or senior bankruptcy analyst. And one of the things that we were charged with the responsibility of making sure that trustees complied with the Bankruptcy Insolvency Act. And that involved field visits, office audits, etc. And one of the things that I have the luxury that other trustees who didn't work for the superintendent of bankruptcy is I saw a lot of different trustee practices, and I always took the positive from those, and I built my kind of thinking around best practices. And so I think that's why we're fairly successful, is that you always want to take a page out of somebody else's book if it's better than yours and replace it with that page. And that's what I do. I try to be the best trustee I can.
Being that you got to see so many bankruptcy trustees in action, I think that would really round you off to what works and what doesn't work. But
John?
being that it's all regulated through the federal government, did it make a big difference to see how other people ran their trustee businesses?
Let me just tell you, I saw a lot of great trustee work and I saw some bad trustee work. And at the end of the day, the Bankruptcy Insolvency Act is all, although everybody thinks it's exactly black and white, it sometimes is gray. And so the courts have established what is good practices and not. And at the end of the day, I avoid bad practices where I didn't think it was a good road to go down. I always wanted to go down the road that complied with the Bankruptcy Insolvency Act, and I would use case law to back those decisions up.
What are the most common reasons why Albertans come to you for help?
Traditionally, a lot of times people lose their jobs. And when you lose your job, if you're making $100,000 a year, you were able to service your debt and you were just chipping away slowly but surely. Now, all of a sudden, you lose your job and now you have to go on EI and you're getting $2,300 a month or whatever the figure is. That's a significant impact to your cash flow. And so what people will often do is say, I'll live on credit for a little while, but that only lasts so long. And then they realize, or they maxed out on their credit, they got to do something. They're still on EI, they can't find a job, so they'll call us. Another common reason is you have a divorce. And so the lawyers get a bunch of money, and the two individuals that are separating, often what happens is they both may need to do a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal because they don't have the cash flow. There's two separate households instead of one household with two incomes. So the math doesn't work. And often we'll have people who go through separations to come to us looking for help.
I find that a lot of Canadians are living, if they have an extra $100, they pretty much can buy things on credit. And we're seeing that more people buy things on credit than ever before. And there really is no wiggle room. So when a job loss happens, unfortunately, a divorce happens regularly, or an illness happens, people don't know what to do. They're surprised by it, even though we shouldn't be. We should be a little more prepared. But that's not reality, is it?
No, it isn't. And that's something that happens every day, unfortunately, in Canada.
When you talk to somebody who's in trouble like that, how does that conversation start?
The first thing that I try to do is put their mind at ease. I let them know that we're here to help. We're not here to cry over spilled milk. We've all made stupid financial decisions in our life, me included, and we learn from those experiences. And what I try to tell them is, you're not alone. Over 100,000 Canadians filed bankruptcies and proposals last year. Things happen in our life, and at the end of the day, we need to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and move on. And I'm there to help them and hold their hand to get through the process so I can get them debt free and have a better quality of life.
That has to be, you must see a real change in people when they find out what the options are in this world, where they're thinking, there's no way out. I don't know what I'm going to do. Can you walk us through what that change looks like when they finally meet you and talk with you and find out that there are options?
It is very rewarding when I sit down. I'll remember a case just not that long ago where the lady thought she was down and out. When I first talked to her on the phone, she probably cried the first 10 minutes through the conversation. And she said, I'd really like to meet you. So I met her in our Edmonton downtown office. And when I sat down with her, I said, okay, tell me what's going on. Of course, she cried some more and got that emotion out. And then I said, okay, now I need to know who you owe money to. What are your circumstances? And we went through things. And when we were all done, I said, we are going to fix this for you. And she just burst into tears. She was so happy. She wanted to hug me. It was wonderful. And that's why I love the job that I do, because I like helping people.
Somebody makes the phone call to your office. What is the step by step process that they go through in their initial consultation?
Essentially, if they phone our office at our toll-free number, the 1-888-371-8900, they'll get the reception. The reception will, how can we help you? And the typical response is, I think I'm in deep trouble and I don't know what to do. Okay, we have free consultations in our firm. And right now we have Glenn Steiner that's available to talk to you. Would you like me to connect them? If I'm available, that's what they do. If I'm not available, they'll take their name and phone number and they'll say, Glenn Steiner will call you by phone. The number that you gave us, he will call you at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Glenn phones them and I basically get some background information. Who do you owe money to? What do you do for work? What are your assets? And we start to have a dialogue about their situation. People want to be heard. And my father taught me one great lesson. You have two ears and one mouth. Use them proportionally. Listen to people. It's very important that we understand what they're going through and show some empathy and show them that we can fix their problem.
And they don't have to make a decision immediately. It's not like,
Absolutely not. And that's a very good point, Wayne. One of the things that I tell people is we're not like these high pressure car salesmen where they want to sell you the car that day and get a written offer. I say to people, this is serious business. You need to think this through. You need to process it. Maybe you want to talk to your family, talk to friends. You know anybody that's gone through this process? Ask questions. I always have one rule, and the rule is there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Glenn, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have when it comes to bankruptcies or consumer proposals?
It's a great question because I've had so many people say, I need to do bankruptcy and I know I'm going to lose everything. And that is far from the truth. The myth about if you do a bankruptcy, you lose everything is not true. In the province of Alberta, there's the Civil Enforcement Act, and it states that you are allowed to keep certain things, even if you do a bankruptcy. You're allowed to keep your clothing to a value of 4,000 with your personal effects. You're allowed to keep your household furniture to a value of $4,000. If you have RSPs, even if you have $100,000 of RSPs, those are sacred. The government of Canada wants Canadians to save for their retirement. And I've seen so many people, they deplete their RSP to pay the debt. And it breaks my heart to hear that. I wish they would have called me sooner because I could have told them, save that money for retirement because that is important. It breaks my heart when I see seniors come through our doors. They're 68 years old and all they're living on is 2,800 bucks because they blew all of their retirement plan on paying down debt, which then they ended up getting back into debt. So it's very unfortunate to see those types of things.
That's very important. That's one thing that a lot of clients say, I wish I'd come and talk to you sooner.
I hear that so often. And the other example I neglected to mention about the exemptions is in Alberta, people think that they're going to lose their house. And that's not necessarily true. The law says that they can shelter $40,000 of equity in their principal residence. So if you have a house that's worth 400,000 and you have a 360,000 mortgage, as long as you keep making your mortgage payments, the creditors cannot force the sale of your house and you can keep the sale of your house. Now, I'm very compassionate. I'm very empathetic. I know that families don't want to uproot their children and have to go to a different school. So let's suppose they have $20,000 excess equity. They have $60,000 of equity. They're only allowed to shelter 40. Now, if they both are doing a bankruptcy or a proposal, they can only shelter 20,000 each. And they would also have to pay, if they were doing a bankruptcy, they'd have to pay the 10,000 excess equity that they had after their exemption into the trustee's trust account to pay the creditors. If they're doing a proposal, we usually build into the proposal that the creditors would have got $10,000 equity in the house. And so the debtor might say, I want to make sure that gets looked after, and I'm going to pay more than what they would get in a bankruptcy. So we usually work it so that it's a fair and reasonable situation for the debtor, and it's a fair and reasonable situation for the creditors.
Glenn, have you noticed any difference, change, shift in clients looking for insolvency these days?
It's interesting you ask that. It's a sad situation, but in Alberta, I have noticed a lot more seniors, like 60 and above, where they have worked all their life. They've depleted all their assets. They've been living on credit. And here they come through our doors. They have $1,400 each in income. How do you live in Alberta for $2,800? It's very difficult. And they were living on credit, and now they need to come and ask for our help. And one of the biggest things is that they need to learn how to budget their money. They may have worked in great jobs, but they spent it as they made it. And again, I reiterate to anybody who's listening out there, please be disciplined to set money aside for your retirement because it's so important. It breaks my heart when I see couples that are 60 and over come in and they have absolutely no assets. They've spent their money. Yes, they've had a good life, but you also want to continue that good life into your senior years. And if you don't have money, now you have to go through a bankruptcy as a senior, and that's never fun for anyone.
How do you determine whether a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal or maybe another option is best for a client?
That's a great question. And one of the things, as I said earlier in my consultation phase, I get some facts and I say to them, okay, what do you have for assets? What do you have for liabilities? What is your income? So I just had a call yesterday, for example, and the gentleman had a paid for house worth $600,000 in Calgary, Alberta, and he had about $100,000 of debt. Well, I said to him, look, you really don't need to do a bankruptcy. All you really need to do is go to your banker, ask for a mortgage or a secured line of credit, get the $100,000 and pay off your creditors. Then you don't even need me. However, in this guy's case, he had been laid off and he'd been unemployed for 3 years, and he literally lived off his savings for the last 3 years with no income. Now he just turned 65. He's got his Canada pension and OAS, but he only makes $1,400 a month. How can he afford to get a mortgage? And so what I said to him is, if the bank won't give you money, see if family members would lend you money, they could put a mortgage on your house and then you pay them back eventually, or when you pass away or you're ready to move into a retirement home, you sell the house and pay them back. But if that doesn't work, we can do a consumer proposal. We can put you into a small payment plan for $100 a month, for example. And you know that eventually you're going to not want to stay in your house forever and shovel snow and cut grass. So we give you a 5-year
Are there
window
any
to
red
say,
flags that you
we'll
notice
pay
when
a
you talk
small
to people
payment every
that
month for
people need to be
five
aware of,
years.
saying that
And
they
then
are in
after the end of the
financial
five
trouble?
years in the 60th month,
Red flag for
you're going to
me
either
is they
refinance
say,
your house to pay
how
out
do
the
I
creditors,
get
or you're
out
going
of
to sell the
not
house to
paying
pay
this
out the
debt?
creditors.
I've got
So I'm very fortunate
$40,000
in
in
the
a
fact that,
tax-free
as
savings
again, going
account. Can
back
I
to my
keep that in the
OSB days, I
bankruptcy? And
saw
I'll
a
say,
lot of different
unfortunately, that's not
trustee
an exempt
creative
asset.
ways to make a
If that was
proposal work.
in
And I've been very good
RSPs,
at
you could
making
keep it.
sure that
What do I do? Do I
anybody that
transfer
needs
to
our
my
help,
daughter
if I can
tomorrow?
help
Those are
them,
red
I
flags
will.
for me.
I want people to play
Are
by
there
the
any red
rules.
flags that you
In a
notice when
way,
you talk to
trustees are
people
like a
that people need to
referee.
be aware of,
We
saying that
know
they
that we
are
have
in
to be
financial trouble?
respectful of the debtor's
A red flag
issues,
for
but
me
we
is
also
they
want to make
say,
sure that the
how
creditors
do
are
I
getting
get
their
out of
fair
not paying this
return.
debt?
They
I've
were the
got
ones that lent the money to the debtors,
$40,000
and
in a
for the
tax-free
most
savings
part, I have
account.
to
Can I
say
keep
that
that in a
people
bankruptcy?
who
And I'll
come to
say,
see me,
unfortunately, that's
they
not an
truly
exempt
don't want
asset.
to
If
mess
that
up the
was in
creditors. They want to pay something, and
RSPs, you could
often that's
keep
why
it.
we have so
What
many
do I do? Do I
proposals
transfer to my
in
daughter
Canada
tomorrow?
now, is
Those are red
because people
flags for
do want to
me.
pay. They know
I
they
want
borrowed the
people to
money
play by
and
the
they want to
rules.
pay it back.
In a way,
But
trustees are
that's
like a
my biggest
referee.
red flag. We know that we have to be respectful of the debtors' issues, but we also want to make sure that the creditors are getting their fair return. They were the ones that lent the money to the debtors. And for the most part, I have to say that people who come to see me, they truly don't want to mess up the creditors. They want to pay something. And often that's why we have so many proposals in Canada now, is because people do want to pay. They know they borrowed the money and they want to pay it back. But that's my biggest red flag.
How has your role changed since joining Allen and How has your role changed since joining Allen Marshall and Associates?
One of the things that is interesting, we all know how COVID affected our lives and how it destroyed so many businesses, small barber shops, salons, massage, yeah, the list goes on. And one of the things that happened pre-COVID was that, as a licensed insolvency trustee, I had to meet people in person. It was the law. They had to come to our office. I would physically have to explain everything in person in black and white. And then when COVID hit, the superintendent of bankruptcy, who regulates our industry, had to change the rules to allow video and telephone calls to happen. And so the world has changed. And I joined Allen Marshall about the time where we had just come out of COVID. And here I am, a senior, and I had to learn technology all over again. I'm probably the second world's worst person when it comes to technology, but I had to learn how to do video chatting and all that kind of stuff. And now I've got it mastered. So if you're afraid about video conferencing, trust me, I'm the second world's worst person, but I learned it. You can learn it too. And that's the biggest change for me, was learning the new technology. And of course, Allan Marshall and Associates. Every trustee has different philosophies. I am very honored to work for such a great company. This company says, do what's right for the client, not what's right for us. We could try to hose them and convince them to come into a proposal, but if they don't need it, why would we want to do that? We get more credibility by saying to people, you really don't need our help. Just do this on your own, and here are the steps to do it. And then they say to their neighbor who's having financial difficulty, go to this guy because he's very honest and he's got full of integrity and he'll steer you in the right direction. It's not about the almighty dollar. It's about what's best for the client. And we have great leadership in our corporation, and I'm very honored to be a part of that.
What advice do you give someone who is ashamed about making this call? They're ashamed that they're in debt.
You know what? One of the things that I say to people is, look, we all make mistakes. That's why the good Lord put an eraser at the end of a pencil. We all make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. It will consume you. And I find that when people have significant stress, it starts to affect their health. We are here to help. We are here to fix your debt problems. And don't be ashamed, because you're not the only one who's in the same boat. Over 100,000 Canadians have done this in the last year. What we need to do is focus on your future. Let's not worry about the past. Focus on the future. Let's give you a fresh start. And that's what the Bankruptcy Insolvency Act is all about, is giving an honest but unfortunate debtor a fresh start. And that's what I love doing for people.